right?
What does your mother teach?
She's retired, but she used to teach children's literature, Spanish and education, and Spanish Portuguese. But she's been retired for like 10 years, maybe 15.
Los Descendientes gave me an award, and I dressed like a mariachi.
I love it.
Well, I wore the mariachi tie and the jacket.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I was much younger then.
Mariachi Atzlan. Can we give another round? So much power.
Gracias.
Right? So, really quick housekeeping. If you're now on the dance floor, please do not bring any drinks or food. We want to preserve this space for it's been here for a long time. I also want to recognize the video that was playing earlier, which was the Reclaiming the Border Narrative Digital Archive, along with other promotional materials from Melissa del Bosque, from Favianna, Special Collection, and Lydia Otero. So thank you so much for providing those materials, and please check out their work. I also want to take a moment to talk about the Reclaiming the Border Narrative grantees. So if you see in the back, we have some art display that we had at the symposium in March 2024. So once our program is over, take a minute and read about some of the work that was done. And lastly, because I couldn't really, I'm not sure if any of you could hear me back there, but I want to introduce my boss, Javier Duran. So Dr. Javier Duran is the director of the Confluencenter and professor of Latin American Studies Studies at the University of Arizona. In 2022, he was appointed as co-president for the Consortium of Humanities and Institute. Dr. Duran also serves as the Arizona-Mexico Commission Board of Directors, and his leadership and scholarship has made significant contributions to both academia and the community. So welcome, Duran.
Thank you so much. I'm going to get a little spot for the microphone right here. So, good evening and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's an honor to have you all here. And I would like to begin with an acknowledgement by our colleague, Yadira Caballero. Yadira, she literally ran the Confluencenter, and previously to come to the Confluencenter, she worked at the Ural Center for Native Nations Institute, and she also serves on the board of directors of the Southwest Native American Foundation that provides scholarship opportunities for emerging Native American leaders pursuing higher education. She has an MG in Jurisprudence and Indian Law from the University of Tulsa and a BS in Agribusiness Economics from the U of A. Yadira.
I'm going to speak in my Diné language. Yate Amonso, She Ya Yadira Caballero Yanishia, look at the Nishna, Nakai Bashishi, Topa Hanta Shiche, Ado, Nakai Dashanella, Bitas A De Nasha, Do Program Manager, Ade Confluencenter, A Woodpot, Shanat Nish, Ado Tucson De KHT. Bitako Yate. It means greetings in my Navajo language. As a Diné person, I begin by acknowledging our profound connection to the earth, the universe, and our origins. In our Diné tradition, we recognize the bond between ek, which is kinship, and the land. Our identity is deeply interwoven with the land, reflecting a relationship that includes all living beings. Many of us come from diverse homelands, yet we share the same fundamental understanding. Today, we are gathered here in Arizona, a land that is home to 22 federally recognized tribes. We honor the neighboring relatives of the Tohono Nation and the Pasquayaqui tribe. It is their stewardship and enduring care for these lands that allows us to be here. These lands are deeply tied to the original people who continue to uphold the traditions and cultures. Everything around us, our plants, waters, the mountains, and the animals, hold significance and purpose. We give thanks to Mother Earth and offer our gratitude to the Creator. We are entrusted with the responsibility of caring for the land and a life upon it. Nehama Nahasan Ba'ahiya Ta'ahani Nehala. It means it is up to us to care for Mother Earth. Ta, which is ego teya, means it is up to you. As we engage with this land, it is crucial to remain mindful of our presence and our role of this place. May we reflect on the significance of where we are and carry this awareness into our endeavors. That way, Nahastan, which is our Mother Earth, will be healthy for our future generations. Akihat, thank you.
So gracias, doctor. Thank you very much. Is it the right spot? So Confluencenter Show and Tell has historically been a casual space for community members, artists, performers, and scholars to share their innovative work. We started this in a bar downtown in 2012, and the series has covered a myriad of research and creative topics by faculty, students, artists, cultural practitioners, and community members. More recently, we had conversations on migration perspectives in this very same place and historical lessons on the mariachi movement on the Borderlands at the Sosa Carrillo House last May. This show and tell represents the culmination of 3 years of work, the University of Arizona Confluencenter and special collections. Throughout the years, we work with dozens of artists, journalists, and organizations to build a digital archival community that reflects the unique experiences and stories about everyday life, love, and resilience in the Borderlands. This work would not have been possible without a wonderful partnership with the U of A Libraries Special Collections team, led by my amazing colleague and co-principal investigator of the project, Verónica Reyes Escudero. Verónica serves as the Catherine B. Willow-Hero Special Collections at the U of A Libraries. She's a passionate advocate for inclusivity and diversity in libraries and archives. Thank you, Verónica, and to the rest of the RBN team for your knowledge, dedication, and commitment. And the team, can the team stand up, please? Members of the team that are here. Thank you very much. To reflect on this project, we're going to show a short video created by Kat Evasco of the Reclaiming the Border Narrative Symposium that we held here in Tucson in March 2024, in which many of you attended. Can we play the video now?
Thank you again for joining us to celebrate the Reclaiming the Border Narrative. This digital archive was built by the University of Arizona. This initiative funded 50 plus projects by Borderlands artists, activists, journalists, and storytellers over a period of 3 years, and it aimed to build cultural and narrative power and capacity to challenge the dominant and harmful narratives about Borderlands and migrant communities.
The idea of this digital archive for reclaiming the border narrative was so significant because it's almost a culmination of years of work. We really needed to focus on border studies, which had been an idea of hers since the 1990s. I started having conversations with faculty on campus about what the needs were in terms of special collections, the archives aspect. We really wanted a broader understanding of the border, the joy, just the beauty of just our area. It's not always tragic and it's not always drama. To be able to just sort of have an amass of creators who were already working in that space allowed us then to just do the work that we can do, right, which is the digital archive. There's examples of the ideas of what the border is by Evan Apalaca's work. There's the Semilla project on there, and we have manuscripts. So it's awesome that we have some digital artwork there. Awesome that we have beautiful photography. There's a variety of materials on there. I think that what's unique is that we really did it very deliberately and committed to partnership with the creators. That's what we wanted to do, is represent the border in a way that was represented by people who live and work here. They themselves described the work. They themselves selected or curated what was going to go on the website or on the digital archive. So that in itself is unique.
Disabled people are oftentimes just completely left out of being seen as having wisdom to offer. The way that, to me, how I feel like I've been able to learn and grow within disability community, I wanted that to be part of the wisdom that was part of this archive.
There needs to be a record, and so I think for me, being part of this archive and learning how to archive is very important, because I feel like these testimony that we're here, that we're not this invisible labor, or that we're not just labor, that we're actually artists and undocumented people are creating bodies of work.
Think about what will happen in 50 years. For journalists like me, the archives are a living and breathing thing.
We have to understand the importance of recording our stories, because that is how you write history, is through documentation, is through the maintenance of these records. Without archives, we lose a sense of ourselves. If we don't document and record, it is like these things did not happen.
I want better representation of what's in the border, because I think people see the drama about it, and so it feeds into our psyche about whether it's safe or not. You know, and not, if we're feeling that, can you imagine people in the Midwest, like what they think about what the border is? And then, you know, the ultimate thing might be changing some minds, maybe informing policy. So I really would like to see a more expansive understanding of what our US-Mexico border is.
When people speak about us, it's an opportunity for us to show the important role that archives, libraries, cultures play and provide. There's access to more than documents. There's access to lifeways and beliefs and strength and community. It's a celebration to live here. Let's take the narrative over for ourselves and recreate the border the way we think it should be.
So that for itself, but at the same time, it's important to remember that 4 years ago, one main goals of the project funded by the Ford Foundation was to effectively change the way in which mainstream media often misrepresents the US-Mexico borderlands, depicting chaos, criminalization, and dehumanization influenced by political and economic interests. And this is what many folks call the border military-industrial complex. And it is used to justify anti-immigrant policies, particularly during elections. And isn't it that area in which some people are talking about us today somewhere in Pennsylvania? Well, that's one of our goals, right, to challenge that. And so as the archival partner of the University of Arizona, ensure that the stories and material generated are digitally preserved, accessible to the public, and promoted through public programming. The archive serves as a dynamic space for dialogue, creativity, and academic engagement. And we have now a video from Gabe Solis, who unfortunately could not join us in person. Gabe Solis is the executive director of the Texas After Violence Project, a community-based archive and documentary project cultivating deeper understandings of the impacts of the state violence on individuals, families, and communities. We're deeply indebted to Gabe because thanks to his convincing persistence as a Ford Foundation consultant, we were able to submit a proposal to become the project's archival partner. So with that, can we play the short video?
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriel Solis. I'm a cultural memory worker committed to documenting and preserving our community's stories and records to build power and change dominant narratives and cultures of violence, retribution, and disposability. In 2020, I was honored to be invited to help launch the Reclaiming the Border Narrative initiative and work closely with project partners to select the Confluencenter for Creative Inquiry as the archival home of the stories, testimonies, artworks, and reflections that were created and preserved as part of the initiative. What we saw in the Confluencenter was a clear dedication to documenting, preserving, and creatively sharing cultural narratives of loss, survival, resistance, life, love, and resilience. Community-centered archival initiatives like Reclaiming the Border Narrative are essential to our collective fight for justice and liberation. Our communities have always told, documented, and preserved our stories and records. We've always understood the mission of collective memory because our histories, cultures, and existence have always been under threat of erasure. Archives continue these traditions of collective memory by protecting endangered stories, records, and knowledge against loss and deliberate destruction, and by recovering and reclaiming government records of violence and atrocity as our own counter-narratives and counter-records. Archives help expand brief ruptures in dominant narratives into sustained narrative change and cultural transformation. These stories and records, together in the archives, in the context of one another, are powerful narrative mosaics that dismantle dominant narratives of violence, retribution, and disposability. Archival initiatives, like Reclaiming the Border Narrative, are conduits for truth, resistance, and healing. They don't let us look the other way. They enrage us, inspire us, and move us to action. They change us, our beliefs, and our worldviews. This is the power of memory work that is as necessary as it is fulfilling and as urgent as it is liberating. Thank you all for your commitment to this work, and thank you for the invitation to share these reflections with you today.
Gracias, Solis. And now to the distinguished panel. Moderating tonight's panel discussion, our very own Dr. Lydia Otero. Lydia is a historian and writer in the community. They are an associate professor emeritus in the Department of Mexican American Studies at the University of Arizona. Their scholarship employs space as an analytical tool to explore urban redevelopment and contested landscapes in Tucson, related to and legitimized by history and white dominance. They specialize in public history, Latinx urbanization, and placemaking in Latinx communities. Otero's essays on reclaiming place and history, heritage conservation, and collective memory have appeared in various books, anthologies, and scholarly journals. In 2011, their book La Calle, Spatial Conflicts and Urban Renewal in a Southwestern City, won a Southwest Book Award from the Portland Regional Library Association. They also published 2 memoirs that blend personal experiences with historical archives. They released In the Shadows of the Freeway, Growing Up Queer in 2019, and LA Interchanges, a prime queer archival memoir in 2023. Take it away, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you all for being here. I can see that this mic is going to be a problem, so just bear with me because I'm a talker and I'm going to keep talking even though it runs out. So first of all, thank you all for being here. I know that you could be somewhere else right now and you'd be sitting there and saying to yourself, when are these 2 debaters going to get to the issue of the border? Well, for the next hour and a half or 2, we're going to be talking about the border the full time. And anyway, so anyway, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that you're here to share this with us, because I think we have some great presentations, and what we're going to discuss are issues about the border and borderlands that are certainly more humane than the issues being discussed elsewhere. I'm going to start with the first presenter, Alba Fernandez-Keys, sitting next to me. Alba is the Borderlands curator at Special Collections at the University of Arizona, where she's responsible for the stewardship of materials documenting the U.S.-Mexico border region from California to Baja California to Texas to Tamaulipas. She's a graduate of the University of Arizona, and prior to moving back to Tucson in April of 2023, she was the head of libraries and archives at the Indianapolis Museum of Art. We're lucky you came back. Where she led multiple grant-funded projects focused on records management and archival digitization and access. So I pass the mic on to Alba.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and I'm honored to be on this panel. I'm also really thankful. Really close. Is that better? Okay. Thank you. I'm also really glad to have been a part of the Reclaiming the Border Narrative Project, or RBN as I'll be referring to it, which was already underway as I assumed the Borderlands curator position in Special Collections at the University of Arizona in early 2023. Before accepting the job, I was aware and excited that the University of Arizona Library was involved with multiple projects concerning the documentation and expanding access to Borderlands materials. One of them Reclaiming the Border Narrative, where the University Library acts as a preservation and access partner, bringing together a multitude of projects undertaken by cultural workers, journalists, and other practitioners who reside in communities along the border. This indicated to me that there is a commitment from the university libraries for special collections to remain a steward of materials concerning our region, to fill historical gaps of underrepresented voices, and be a center for study and research of the border and the histories of its many communities. The RBN project is an exciting opportunity for a large institutional library like ours to support grassroots community projects, to preserve and make them accessible. Creating a centralized site for access takes an enormous amount of work and staff, from communicating with grantees to selecting and describing content and creating a website and translating and incorporating preservation techniques and web recording and a million other things that I just really couldn't think of, but I know my colleagues here who worked on this project so much probably know very well. But because of that, and because of all of their work, creating this archive and working on this project has allowed us to build a process and the know-how and to have the ability to support similar projects in the future. It is our hope that the archive will continue to grow, and as Borderlands curator, this is when my work really starts. So for communities along the U.S.-Mexico border, as we heard in the videos that we just saw, have not had much control over the narratives used in political speech or in mass media. The current narrative often focuses on the bad and the dangers and the deaths. What this archive presents is a parallel narrative, the stories of those who live and work on the border, which has, as we know, many sad and difficult stories to tell, but also has a very rich culture where families live and share amazing food and help others in need and enjoy theater and art and volunteer and write about our unique landscape. This archive spans both sides of the border, from California and Baja California to Texas and Tamaulipas. It crosses barriers and centers community over political divides. So, let me see, can you go to the next slide? Actually, the next one, sorry, I forgot to tell you. Yeah, so as someone who fell in love with library work through cataloging, that's really was my initial love of libraries, and that centers, a lot of that work centers around language, and so I am fascinated by the power of language. One of the aspects of RBN that I really appreciate is the planning and thinking that went into the language use for the project. So we as archivists and librarians are trained in organizing, describing, and making classification decisions about materials. The language that we use may not be as user-centered or accurate or intuitive as that used by the original creators of collections. But as a library, there's a reason for this. As a library, we need to conform to our wider networked environments of information sharing across libraries to provide a more accurate, information sharing across libraries. And I'm thinking of places like, for example, WorldCat or all those meta searches where you have that library-to-library connection. So we have to use very precise language. But in order to provide a more accurate and community-centered access, the RBN project participants were able to make decisions about the descriptive language used to represent their collections, and perhaps sometimes even including local terminology. So in this record that you see here, you will see our very precise Library of Congress language, but you also have community terms included, and that eliminates some barriers of access. In addition, every collection is described in both English and Spanish, providing an additional access point to users. So incorporating this archive into our Borderlands collection at the university, I see it working in many ways, and I'm going to talk about some and give you some examples of how we use archival collections, and I'm hoping that this collection really becomes part of that. First of all, the teaching and learning. So professors bring their students to special collections on a regular basis to enhance coursework and introduce students to primary source research. Many of our students have not always seen themselves or their communities represented in the library or the classroom, but representation is important. For students visiting special collections for the first time, seeing themselves in the collections can foster connections that enrich their learning experience and create a sense of belonging at the university for the next 4 years, hopefully. Also to inform current practice, and I'm thinking about, my co-presenters and also all the people that do community archives work. As librarians and archivists, our hope is that not only researchers 50, 100, 200 years from now can better understand life on the border as it exists today through using archives, but also that practicing advocates, activists, and others can use materials in the archive to learn about the past, what worked, what didn't, and really think about the archives as informing their practice to change some of those narratives surrounding the border. Also to amplify voices of the borderlands. Scholars travel to our library on a regular basis, and traveling to archives can be expensive. So sometimes that may not even be a possibility. So digital collections like this one can reach people across the country, across the border, or across the world. And finally, to inspire, and can I get the next slide, please? So as you can see, we used, the RBN project was included in our current exhibition, Century, who belongs here, and also, thinking about inspiring, the RBN project recently offered a grant award for creative reuse. We had 3 awardees. On the screen you see the work of one of the 3, Yadira Caballero, with help from Ben Davis and Emily Cray, who, inspired by some of the materials in the archives, created an artist book titled El Otro Lado. As I said before, our hope is that these collections continue to grow, that Borderlands practitioners are seen and heard in other parts of the world, that this inspires a new generation of students and scholars to gain a better understanding of our border communities, and also that through presentations like this one, like the 2 Fronteri forums that we held last year, the symposium that you just heard about held here in Tucson last March, and various other online gatherings, the project achieved 2,000 miles of connections, partnerships, and conversations. And with that, I invite you to visit us in person in special collections, and also visit the archive online. And if you go to the next screen, that should have a QR code. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alba. You said that you when I entered today, I met a lot of people that are working on your colleagues that are working on the archives. Maybe we could take time to introduce them right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. So, of course, we have Veronica Reyes Escudero, our head of the department. And we have, let's see, it's Richard. Let me see, Richard. It's over there. Let me see. Bianca is here. And let me see, who else is here from the project? Lorena Diaz back there. And I think that's who we have. And of course, the Confluencenter.
I think that's important because I think we all share a love of libraries and librarians, right? And I think I'm digging being a moderator because I pretty much can say anything, right? I've never been a moderator.
Yeah, you put me on the spot. I was like,
let's get on to our second speaker, and
it's Melissa. Maybe I'll trade mics.
Yes, I think this one works better.
Our second speaker is Melissa del Bosque, and Melissa has written about the U.S.-Mexico border since 1998. And that's a long time. That's when I started my PhD program. For various media outlets, including ProPublica, The Guardian, The Texas Observer, and The New Yorker. Her work has been acknowledged with numerous journalism awards, including an Emmy and the RFK Human Rights Journalism Award. She's the co-founder of the Tucson-based media outlet, The Border Chronicle, and the U.S.-Mexico Investigations Editor for Lighthouse Reports. You ready, Melissa?
Yes. Hopefully this mic works. Yes, it does. All right. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to stare at my slides, which you're not supposed to do when you give a PowerPoint, but since I'm blind, I need to see my slides and tell Alejandro when to change them. Thank you so much, and thank you to the Confluencenter. It's such an honor to be part of this, and I really, really appreciate the invitation. So we're an independent media outlet based here in Tucson. I started this with Todd Miller, who probably many of you in this room know, and I think some of you we've even interviewed for our outlet. We're on the Substack platform. If you're not familiar with it, it's an email-based newsletter, and we come out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we also have a podcast. And so one of our goals what part of our mission at the Border Chronicle is to fight false narratives about the border and to elevate the voices and perspectives of border residents. Let's see, next slide. So what is border journalism? At the Border Chronicle, we think border journalism is a unique discipline. Many national outlets treat it as an immigration beat, but it's many, many more things than just immigration. It's health, it's environment, it's the border security, industrial complex. It's many, many different issues that we cover in the region on both sides of the border. And so these are some of the characteristics of border journalism that we practice. Bilingual, multicultural, community-based. I won't read all of them because you can see there. Protects vulnerable subjects with anonymity. This is a woman that I interviewed at the Kino shelter in Sonora. And so we think it's a unique discipline in itself, border journalism. Change the slide. So you've probably heard that journalism is in trouble. See that plunging top line? That's like closures of media outlets. And then that line below it are digital outlets. So you see this uptick in digital, which is what we are as well. But it's nowhere near recovering from the amount of outlets that have closed, especially along the border. So what happens when all of these community and local outlets close? It gets filled by right-wing content creators and media sites that have filled a void when it comes to the national narrative around the border. So what we hear is a lot of negative coverage of the border from these outlets. You know, we hear about chaos, invasion, and immigrant crime, and we're hearing a lot of that right now in the election season. You can change it. So what we've seen from this negative narrative is a lot of this is coming out of the MAGA movement, you know, that supports Trump. And we've also documented the merging of militias and content creators, which is a disturbing trend. In this, these are people that we've written about for the Border Chronicle. In the top frame, that's a former Texas police officer who works for Newsmax, which is an outlet that is to the right of Fox News. And he's working with these armed members of a group called Mayhem Solutions Group, who's from Casa Grande. The guy below is Ben Berquam, who works with Steve Bannon, and he's worked with Arizona Recon, which is another militia at the Arizona-Mexico border. So we try to counter these guys and sort of expose what it is that they're doing. It's pretty bizarre when you see somebody trying to do an interview with someone with armed people standing around him. It's not typically the way that you do journalism. Next slide. So some of the things that we do is really try to elevate community solutions, perspectives from the border. This is Cafe Justo, who some of you are probably familiar with in Agua Prieta. This is a coffee co-op and cafe that was started by people in Douglas and Agua Prieta and in Chiapas by coffee growers in southern Mexico. And it's so that they don't have to migrate for economic reasons. They can sell their coffee at a fair trade price and not have to migrate. So it's a very cool sort of binational community-based solution to a huge issue on the border, which is economic migration and also climate change displacement. Next slide. Okay, the rehumanization of migrants. So there's a lot of, I've worked the last 20 years in Texas, and things are pretty terrible there right now politically, especially in the way that people who are migrating are treated. They're very dehumanized. So we emphasize humanity of people in the Borderlands. This is a story that I did in 2022 out in Yuma, where on Earth Day, the Border Patrol's official Instagram page celebrated Earth Day by featuring photos of asylum seekers' belongings with the message that it was trash and litter left behind by illegal immigration. And in Texas, the Border Patrol chief posted photos of people's belongings, calling them burdensome trash. But so when I went to Yuma, what was actually occurring is that Border Patrol was forcing people to leave their belongings behind, including passports, religious items, things that were important to their families. So those trash cans are full of people's items that they were forced to leave behind, and then, right-wing people turned around and characterized it as, people leaving their trash behind, when it was actually quite the opposite. Next slide. One more slide here. Here's another great community story, and probably many of you know Dora Rodriguez and Gail Kosurik. They're here that's in Sasabe at a library that they're opening. They, with the townspeople of Sasabe, Sonora, opened up a migrant resource center, and then they were starting to also open this library. And this is a very beautiful mural that a man from Sasabe had painted in the library. Unfortunately, they're having some conflict right in Sasabe right now, so a lot of people have had to leave and are here. So it's kind of on hold, but it's a really great project that communities from both sides of the border are working on. And next slide. So that is the end of my presentation on the Border Chronicle, and this handsome gentleman over there can sign you up for the Border Chronicle, and there's also a QR code there as well that you can scan, and it will take you to our site. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. That's always much what you do. But tell us a little bit more about the Border Chronicle, that you have to sign up, so we can't just access it on the internet.
Yeah, I mean that's our website up there, and then if you want to scan the QR code over there, it'll take you right to the site. And we welcome paid subscriptions. There's my shameless plug.
Thank you. I think we need to be reminded in terms of what our tax dollars are supporting right now, and how our personal income can support projects like yours, and make great, good decisions regarding where our income goes. have such great questions for all of you, but I'm going to move on to the third presenter. I think a lot of people know Favianna Rodriguez. I didn't. So I was I've been missing out on her energy and her enthusiasm and knowledge. So Favianna is an interdisciplinary artist, a cultural strategist, an entrepreneur based in Oakland, California, but I heard earlier that she loves Tucson. Her art and praxis address migration, reproductive justice, climate change, racial equality, and gender justice. Favianna's work centers on joy and healing, while challenging entrenched myths and dominant cultural practices. Through poignant speeches, she has inspired audiences around the world, including the United Nations, Climate Summit, Sundance Film Festival, Smithsonian, and even Google. A strategy advisor to artists of all genres, Favianna is regarded as one of the leading thinkers and personalities uniting art, culture, and social impact. She's also the president and co-founder of the Center for Cultural Power. So help me welcome Favianna.
Hi everyone. Oh, testing. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Hi. Oh.
Do you want to use this one?
Yeah, I'll use this one. Hi. Hello. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stand up as well because I just move my hands a lot. I'm really happy to be here from California. I am an artist, and so I'm going to present in an artistic way, and I'm going to talk about stories and the power of culture. When we think about the border region, it's very important to understand that culture and narratives have informed the political reality of this place. In fact, culture informs our political reality always. The stories that are told, the myths, the ideas, those who have power to shape the stories, shape political systems. What I talk about in my work is that culture is power. Our stories, our ability to shape the imagination is what allows us to create policies. And so when we think about how to do social change, we have to think about the journalists, the artists, the people that speak to our imaginations. Next slide. So stories are very powerful, right? The stories that you read in a newspaper, the stories that we tell each other. And we've been telling stories since the beginning of time. So I'm going to start with my story and why it is that I'm here and why I am very committed to the work at the border. So I was born in Oakland, California. I am the first generation. My parents were from Peru. My father is Afro-Peruvian. And as a child, I always knew I wanted to be an artist, but I didn't see artists who looked like me on television, right? Dora the Explorer had not existed yet. I hadn't learned about Frida Kahlo. I hadn't learned about Selena until I was 16. And at the time, I was born in 1978. In 1990, there was a census in California, and that census said, aha, all of these Latinos are living in California. What happened a few years later is that our very racist governor created a policy that was called Proposition 187. So if you guys wonder where the model for SB 1070 came from, it came from California in 1994. And the narratives that existed then, right, the narratives that were being normalized on television is that there was an invasion happening from people in the South, that all these people were coming to steal your jobs and they were going to get on public benefits, which is actually a contradiction, right? So it's going to take your job and get on public benefits? It's actually impossible. But nevertheless, these narratives stuck, and you had the birth of the anti-immigrant movement that we know today. So we have to understand that, you remember, immigration was a federal policy. In 1994, California was the first to make it a state policy. And it was rooted in narratives of separation, in saying, in these ideas that somehow there was an invasion happening and you needed to stop them. And the way to stop them is making their life impossible and building a wall. In our lifetime, in many of our lifetime, we have seen the wall come up. And I want us to imagine that we can see the wall come down. Next slide. So when we think about how things happen in our world, they happen in three areas, right? The things that most affect you as a human being will be decided in one of three areas. Number one will be decided in the economic sector, right? You know that corporations today have an immense amount of power, and corporations like Walmart and Amazon are deciding how much we get paid, the quality of our water, and even where the roads are being built. Corporations have a lot of power. That's called economic power. There's another kind of power, which is political power. Political power, who do we elect? Who are the people that represent us, whether on a school board or city council or at the state level or at the federal level? What ideas do they represent and what stories inform their beliefs? And there's a third kind of power, and that is called cultural power. And cultural power influences both politics and economics. So the reason we have anti-immigration policy is rooted in this idea that these people are coming and taking our jobs. The reality is the United States went and destroyed the ecological systems of many countries in the world. It put in dictators and it stole their resources. So migration happens because of American economic policy, because of colonization. But that's not the story you get on the news, right? So we have to understand that what we talk about shapes how people think about the world. The idea that the border is working is a fabricated idea. It's this idea of American sovereignty that is actually very misinformed, but also the border, as we know it, is not working. Not only is it not working, it's an ecological disaster, right? It is putting people in cages for what? For wanting to have a better life, right? You all know, especially those people who have immigrant family members, it takes a lot of courage to leave your home. It's actually heroic to leave your home, to find a better life. Isn't that what we do in our self-care, personal development work, right? Seriously, why do we not celebrate the migrant? Why have we, the narratives that have dominated since Bill Clinton? Remember, every single party has poured billions into a failed experiment. And so what are the stories that will challenge that? Because the old stories are dominating, but we can help dissolve that power. And that's the work that is being done at the Border Archive, is that we are helping to leverage the power of story to dissolve the power. Next slide. So, I'm going to show you some examples of that. I'm going to show you how effective stories have been. Undocumented, unafraid. How many of you remember in the early 2000s when there was immigration marches and they would tell everyone to wear white? Does anyone remember that? They say, oh, everyone has to wear white. Okay, that did not work. Us saying, hey, we're good little immigrants. We work hard. That did not work. What worked, you know that we haven't had immigration policy shifts since 1986. Reagan was the last person to have legalization, right? 1986, it's been over 38 years. Who was able to get federal policy changed? It was undocumented youth. Not because they were nice little immigrants, but because they put on their graduation gowns and they sat and occupied the offices of senators, right? They said, we are undocumented, we're unafraid, we're not going to disappear. That is effective narrative strategy. They won DACA within a few years. 2010, 2012, Obama passed DACA. Next slide. When SB 1070 happened in 2011, my friend Zach de la Rocha said, hey, we're going to have a strike. We're going to tell musicians not to come play in Arizona. Does anyone remember one strike in the history of the United States that helped end a racist regime in Africa? Does anyone remember what helped lead to the end of apartheid? It was artists who helped say, we will refuse to play in South Africa
and they began a movement of economic sanctions. Economic sanctions worked. When artists said they would not play Arizona, and many other people began to boycott Arizona, it created a pressure for things to change, right? So artists came, that is when I came here to support people in resistance, and it changed my life, frankly. It's the reason why I founded an organization, because I realized that artists were very powerful and that we needed to be organized. Next slide. So that was 2011, the sound strike, and it was writers striking, artists, musicians. There was a movement here called Alto Arizona, which is where artists got together and they said, we are going to make art about what is happening here. Now, these were artist-led movements that wanted to create a different narrative about the border. And so it was tremendously important for it to happen here, because Arizona was at the front lines of a number of experiments, right? Not just SB 1070, you had Joe Arpaio putting people in tent cities, right? You had the intersection of anti-reproductive justice laws, of anti-immigrant laws, and so it was important for artists to be here. Next slide. And only artists can do things that are disrupting everything. I love this piece on the left by Julio Salgado. It says Homeland Security. And there's a character and he's holding the border and he's saying, come on in, girl, right? I love this because artists are not bound to what's politically feasible. Artists can help us laugh and expand our imagination. That is the role of the artist. We don't need to just be restricted by what our politicians say, right? We have two candidates who right now are probably talking about which one of them is going to be stricter on the border, which means that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to shifting the narrative, right? And it's artists who can help us create empathy, who can help us laugh, who can help us see something different. Next slide. So I'll close out by saying this is an art piece that I did, sort of my favorite art pieces, but it really symbolizes this, what I'm talking about, which is the power of the imagination and the power of culture to communicate ideas that may not be popular. So Migration is Beautiful is a monarch butterfly. The monarch butterfly flies from Mexico through the United States and Canada and back. The monarch butterfly doesn't carry a passport. It does not care about borders. Did you all know that at one point the three presidents, the Mexican president, American president, and Canadian president got together to design a butterfly corridor, right? Imagine if we do that for human beings, right? We belong to nature. Nature has no borders. We are human beings and we've been migrating since the beginning of time. We have to be able to imagine a world where borders are no longer relevant because Earth does not have borders. And in this moment of climate crisis, these borders are going to collapse. And so I invite you to imagine what a world without borders can be and how can we leverage art and culture to open up our hearts and our imaginations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Favianna. I'm going to, before I pass the mic on to you all and get for some questions and feedback, I'm going to ask each of you a question. I have a press, and it's called Planet Earth Press, and I purposely named it that because we're a planet. There's no borders. It's an Earth. It was very intentional. We followed that, and it wasn't taken. So imagine that. I thought it was like, oh, there's going to be dozens of presses called Planet Earth Press, but it wasn't taken. And this was 2019, so I was very surprised. So I'm going to start off with Alba and asking you, like, some of these things that the library is committing to store in their archives are posters and three-dimensional items. So
somebody can go to the library and request to see them, and you'll bring these. Can you explain a little bit about how you're handling that and capacity issues?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lydia. So yes, this archive is for the most part digital materials for reclaiming the border narrative. However, the archival collection contains materials in many different formats, from the digital, of course, to large posters, maps, of course, manuscript collections, and books, rare books, etc. So we do collect in a very large number of formats, and we are open to the public. You don't have to make an appointment to come in, and just come into the reading room, fill out a registration form, tell us what you want to see, and we will bring it out from storage. So yes, absolutely, we're open for anybody to walk in and work on their research, or simply look at some beautiful materials. And in fact, I think we have some of Favianna's work in the library too, and we've used it for classes, for teaching too.
Oh, great.
So thank you.
Great.
Melissa, I have a question that everybody here wants to ask, but I think you can answer it. And I know you want to ask this question, and I know you're the person that can answer it.
Wow, you're really talking this up.
Okay. Well, so the question is, what does Palestine have to do with the U.S.-Mexico border?
Oh. Well, that is a huge question, Lydia.
Well, no, actually, I went on social media and you posted about this recently,
Yeah,
so I didn't want to surprise you.
Laboratory. So this is something that we cover at the Border Chronicle. We don't just cover the U.S.-Mexico border region, but we look at border systems all over the world. My fellow co-founder, Todd Miller, has written several books about climate change and borders around the world. And so a lot of the surveillance systems and that are created and tested in Palestine are then rolled out to the U.S.-Mexico border and used here as well. So right now, Gaza is a testing ground for technology, like AI, drones targeting people that will then be rolled out to the rest of the world. So right now it's being used basically by companies, a lot of Israeli companies, to showcase how lethal they are so that they can sell it to other countries for their borders. And so, we've had people from Palestine come here to observe what's happening, and there's been a lot of sort of like cross-border solidarity between people from Palestine and people here that live in the border region.
Wow, thank you. Favianna, I have a question around new ideas, and I really appreciate your presentation about imagination and how we refer to even undocumented folks. It's an evolution of language, right? And I recently read that some folks are not even, we don't say transnational. Try to say trans-border, because if you say transnational, it erases the other nations around that are important in the border area. So are there different terms or new terms that are popping up that you think we should be aware of?
Well, actually, the other day I really appreciated, when I was looking on social media, I really appreciated when people said, I'm a citizen of Earth, I'm a citizen of planet Earth, because I think that in the age of climate crisis, we are now at a time of global polycrisis, right? Mm-hmm. Migration is a global issue now. It is the consequence of colonization. Climate crisis as well, which I would argue is also a result of colonization. So I think that, so many of these terms like undocumented, undocumented by who, right? When we're talking about the immigrants who are coming here, often they're not necessarily even from Mexico, they're actually indigenous, right? And so how I think sometimes our language even restricts us because it aligns us with systems that we are not even want to necessarily recognize. So I haven't heard anything, any kinds of words that are sort of around immigration, although I have heard more undocumented folks embracing like ilegal, which I think is kind of cool, right? Like when you're just like, oh, I'm illegal, I'm an outlaw, and you know, that's who I am, I don't care. But I do think that you know, even like when it comes to gender, recently I've been realizing that I want to work towards a more inclusive future, and that I don't know if I want to continue calling myself a woman, because I feel like I have a lot of ways to express my gender, and sometimes woman feels very limiting. And so I think that we have to recognize that language changes, and that we have the opportunity to embrace language in the same way that we're embracing a gender expansive, you know, way. We can also imagine that when it comes to challenging notions of nation, state, and border. And I don't know the answer to it, but I really appreciated when I saw this thing on social media that said, where are you from? And it was a joke. It said, I'm actually a citizen of planet Earth. You know, and as a human being, I am aligning myself with other human beings.
Cool, I love that. Good. So I'm going to pass the mic to y'all, and in the spirit of reclaiming the narrative, the Confluencenter has a exercise for you, or a project for you. See those markers there? They're there for a reason. See that paper there? They're there for a reason. So this is part of the reclaiming and keeping documents, and we want to like make sure that we get people's thoughts, ideas, and we have two questions. I don't know if the questions are going to be on the screen, but we're going to ask you to really think about what you heard, what you want to say, anything you want to say. Those markers are pretty colored. Did something we said or something we talk about make you think about resilience in a different way? What about, we didn't speak so much about love, but it was all about love in your lives, in your communities. We all live in the borderlands. Your footsteps, your voices are just as important. And so we want to give you like 10 minutes or so, just talk to people around you. Yeah, you have to talk to people around you. And then we're going to come back, and then that's going to foster the conversation. Our questions and our conversations are going to be launched off of what you all have to say. And of course, there'll be time for Q&A. But first, we want to try this experience. Yeah?
5 minutes?
5 minutes, and then we're going to come back for Q&A. Thank you for those like heartfelt insights. Now comes the point where I ask questions, and I'm sure your panelists invite questions from y'all. So if you have a question or you have something to say, please feel free. Right now is the time. I have a whole round of questions I could ask, but it's your turn to reclaim this narrative and to really get at some of the more nuanced information that the presenters offered you today.
I want to ask if you identify as trans now. We'd be in the same category.
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for this amazing gathering. I know a few bits and pieces of this project, and I wrote down this question because I'm actually super curious, because I know that all of you are working at creating the things that we want to remember, but I actually wanted to know if there was anything that you felt cannot be archived. But you don't have to answer that question.
I have some thoughts on this. Okay, so you know how we're taking down monuments of all these racist white guys, right? We're taking them down around the country. People are saying we don't want these monuments. Do these monuments need to be stored somewhere for the long term as records of something that existed or not? And I think this question of what do we not need to archive, there are a lot of aspects of history that are horrific and that we may want to forget or destroy. But I actually think it's important to document all aspects of history. The more we do it, the more complete of a story that we have. And sometimes these stories, while they're, atrocities against human beings, are very hard to sit with. I do think that we have to make an effort to document. I think that the reality is there's a very famous quote by an author, an African author whose name I can't remember, but he said, the history of lions will be told by those who hunted them. And essentially, something like that, or he said that until lions have their own historian, their stories will always be told from the hunter's perspective. And I think we have to recognize that if we are not telling our histories, whose perspectives get uplifted? And on that note, what about the species or the things that are not able to document their stories? And when I think about the border and the ecological crisis that's happening at the border, how are we documenting that? How are we documenting from the perspective of non-humans the impacts of the border? So those are the things that your question makes me think about.
I don't have a mic.
Oh, you need a mic?
Yeah.
That's a great response. So I think that in keeping with your response, Favianna, is like, yeah, how do you, we document casualties, deaths, not all deaths, of course, crossing the border, but the kindness, right, that people have expressed toward other human beings, and that's going to be hard, the kindness and the love expressed to undocumented folks as they're crossing and in need of water or in need of food, that just in need of a hello, welcome. Yeah. Another question out there? There's a mic floating around somewhere. It's waiting for you, has your name on it.
Buenas tardes, and thank you so much for the great presentations. What's next? What's next for reclaiming the border narrative?
Hi. So yes, the project is ending at the end of the month. The funding is ending. However, and that's why I said, me as Borderlands curator, this is where a lot of my work starts. So first of all, we plan to continue hosting, promoting the work, making it accessible, incorporating it, really incorporating it with the Borderlands collections, using it for teaching, etc. And we do hope that the archive continues to grow with the help of everybody who worked. And now we have a process. It's a very complicated process, but they figured it out for us. And so now we know how to ingest those materials into the collections and describe them. And we have a process, and we have the know-how. And so hopefully the archive will continue to grow with like collections. We as curators, we really think about each collection. Each collection is unique, and we have to think about many different things in terms of like the formats, the preservation, the content, the provenance, etc. There are many things that we consider, and we will just like we do with every collection, we will think about incoming collections or possible collections, and think if they fit the project, and if we can support them, and if we are the best place for them to be, and try to add that to the archive so that it keeps growing. Thank you for your question.
So in the audience is somebody that's been working on immigration issues for since she graduated Pueblo High School. So take the mic, Alejandra, to Isabel Garcia, because I want Isabel to reflect on the question here and just give us your insights. I'm the moderator, Isabel. I can do this.
Sorry, what's the question?
The questions are right there. What do you think about your insight regarding these?
Well, the idea of archiving was always really scary. It's a scary thing to do, to archive. But after that conference that you had here, I'm convinced it's essential for our community to archive everything that is Tucson, you know. I think somebody already said it, if we don't document our presence here, we do not exist. We just don't exist. We think we do. I mean, I know a lot of stories, you know. I knew about La Placita when it was a regular Mexican town, and my father and mother would sell things in a puesto, like any Mexican town. The little kiosco was in the middle. You see it now, it's on Broadway over here. And they destroyed all of that. How do we preserve that memory and history? I mean, it was completely destroyed, the old Tucson. And now, you know, we have, you know, the urban renewal. So I just think it's essential. You know, being a fifth generation Tucsonan, I see so many of our stories that are being lost, because you're right, stories are everything. They create, like you said, foundational stories. I mean, when you try to tell people that the foundation of this country is not what they think, oh my God, they have a breakdown. That was founded on liberty and justice and all of it. And I tell them, hey, we were founded on stealing the land from the Indians, and then slavery, and you know, on and on. And it's like very shocking, because those are not the myth, those are the myths that we created instead of telling the truth. So I think, what can I say? I don't know that I've said anything other than I think that with these kind of efforts, I think we're onto a really good road to reclaiming this entire border narrative, the entire border, right? Somebody said about transnational and Latinx, but we can't forget what was this land, right here, all of this, U.S.-Mexico border. That's how our immigration laws were set up against Mexicans. Now, you know, and they're unconstitutional, I believe, but you know, that's just my opinion. But these lands are important. We have so many, since before COVID, how many people have come from back east and California and retirees, and lots of people have moved into Arizona. Do they know anything about the border? Nothing, ni papa. And since we've not been involved in, you know, like we used to be really involved in doing a big immigrant rights thing, these people come in and don't see anything. They don't see any fight back, so we need to fight back. And talking about fight back, we have to fight against Proposition 314. So that's, I'll end with that one.
All right. Hey, thank you, Isabel. So before we end, because I'm the moderator and I decide when we conclude, I think I told you that this is the first time that I've ever moderated. I had big shoes to fill, legendary shoes to fill, and the the Confluence moderator that we all know and love, Raul Aguirre, is here. So give the mic to Raul. Raul, say hi, and you can give me a grade. How did I do?
Absolutely A+++. I love it. I think you did wonderful. Give her a big round of applause. She's wonderful, and what you do, Lydia, is amazing. The book, the way you wrote it, the history. I was just talking right now with Dr. Barrios that, you know, I'm a big proponent of pushing a cultural center in Tucson. We don't have a Chicano cultural center that also brings in indigenous and other people that contributed here. I was part of this board, the Somos Uno, that Regina Romero, the mayor, put together. There's a comprehensive plan going on, because I think that's where the collection of all these lives and stories and resilience and the power that we have as a community can be reenacted. And also look at the history. Like I tell people, they go, what would you want to do in a such cultural center? I said, I'd love to see, you know, how and vilify at the same time Joe Arpaio through exhibitions of his, you know, what he did to this Mexican and Chicano community not too long ago. Because otherwise it's going to repeat itself. Right now there's a legislation going on, Proposition 134, right? That is 314, I'm sorry, I'm a little dyslexic here. 314, 334, se baja el cero, no toca. You know, it's that kind of thing. It's coming back. That kind of legislation is coming back. And I think if we have a focus, centered, cultural life where we can talk about it and we can have this kind, the Confluencenter will be there all the time, because we have to bring this kind of things to light. We have to document them. We have to reenact them. We have to, you know, then I think writing plays will come around for Chicano and other theater and all these other things. So I think that's where resilience lies, en el poder de la comunidad, and the power of us coming together for a better city, a better state, a better country, and also to be able to tell those stories that are largely being untold. Right now, for example, there is a documentary by David Valdez about Los Changuitos Feos, which, you know, when you look at it, they go, well, Los Changuitos Feos is a mariachi group, but really it has much more dimension than just being mariachi music. It's about the culture, it's about the Catholic Church, it's about what the Catholic Church did and does, and all these other things that are very important to all of us. So, thank you for the mic. Fabulous work.
Thank you.
Dr. Otero, thank you.
Thank you, Raul. And don't forget to sign up and support the Border Chronicle over there with that young person there. And this concludes the program on my end and our presenters. Javier is going to say a few words. Thank you, Javier, and the Confluencenter for putting this together, for the U of A libraries, Veronica, for pulling this together, and I'm sure there's going to be more. You can tell people that there's going to be more.
So yeah, this is where I gotta take a lot of people here, but it's only fair, right? Because this is a collective effort. It's been an amazing teamwork that we've been able to do with the libraries, the Confluencenter, the grantees from the Ford Foundation, and many of the participants, like some of you, that were really, really instrumental in having this become, hopefully, the seed of a movimiento, no? The movimiento del archivo, archive as community. We have to continue thinking of archiving as an active verb, as an active, as action rather than just something static. And I think this is the type of space, as Raul mentioned, that can make us think locally. What does it mean? What are our histories? What are the representations, the material representations of history that we should be asking our elected officials to invest so future generations can really learn and enjoy and be practitioners of that history. So that's another thing that we're going to continue working on at the local level. So with that, I just, again, un aplauso para la mesa. So to Gabe Vasco and Gabe Solis for the videos, muchas gracias. The special collections and RBA team, Veronica, and I already asked them to stand. So it's already here, so gracias. And a special thanks to Lorena Diaz, who's right there, Lorena. Lorena did an amazing job navigating the administrative maze of the University of Arizona and beyond. And also to Michelle Ceballos, our outreach coordinator, who's not here. She's already in California going to grad school, but she did an amazing work also with the project. To the Casino Ballroom, Fred Martínez, los colegas aquí que trabajan y nos tuvieron aquí la hospitalidad, muchas gracias. El Antojo Poblano, the best Poblano restaurant in Arizona, in my opinion, muchas gracias por la comida. Al Mariachi Atzlan, que ya se fueron, pero son impresionantes y van a seguirlo siendo. Muchas gracias. Al público, a ustedes, you all that were here, many thanks. And the Confluencenter team, please stand up, wherever you are. I know some of you are here. Because I always say that's the best team on campus, and I'm very proud that these people are my colleagues and we work together, and they're always amazing. Especially thanks to Alexandra Mora Medina, and to Yasmin Vasquez, who's over back there, because they really did a great job navigating all these many challenges that these events present. And so we're going to be around. We're going to have some, Raul mentioned the Changuitos Feo documentary. We're working on a screening on campus of that documentary, which is a very interesting piece of history. And I would say the national mariachi story really began with the Changuitos Feos, right? So stay tuned, we're gonna be announcing that. And keep supporting your local artists, archivists, activists, journalists, scholars, and our young people in the community, because that's the hope. And we're here for them. And with that, gracias de nuevo, gracias a los panelistas. Y you're gonna stick around, we're gonna put some music. Está el bar todavía disponible y platicar, conversar. Gracias. Nos vemos a la próxima.